Will Elon Musk take over Twitter? The billionaire has made a controversial offer, but he's facing many hurdles. What's driving Musk's quest to own Twitter, and what would a possible takeover mean for this platform? This is Inside Story. Hello and welcome to the programme. I'm Kim Vinell. Twitter's board has armed itself against a possible takeover after the world's richest man said he wants to buy Twitter. Billionaire Elon Musk has made a $43 billion offer. He says the social media giant needs to be taken private to grow and to become a platform for free speech. But the Twitter board is fighting back. It's adopted a so-called poison pill plan that will prevent anyone from owning more than a 15% stake in the company. It allows others to buy additional shares at a discount, making a buyout much more difficult. Musk recently increased his stake to 9%, making him Twitter's largest shareholder. Musk calls himself a free speech absolutist, opposed to any restrictions on what someone can say on social media, as long as it adheres to the laws of the country where the platform is based. He's posted a series of tweets indicating he thinks Twitter is heading in the wrong direction. It isn't the first time Musk has railed against Twitter, claiming it represses free speech that he partly blames on the platform's reliance on ad revenues. Well, news of the bid set the internet and especially Twitter on fire. Among those responding was Saudi Arabian investor Prince Al-Walid bin Talal. He tweeted saying that as one of the major shareholders in Twitter, he rejected a takeover bid by Elon Musk. He said, "I don't believe that the proposed offer by Elon Musk, $54.20 per share, comes close to the intrinsic value of Twitter, given its growth prospects." Well, let's bring in our guests from Notre, Indiana. We have Tim Hubbard, Assistant Professor of Management at the University of Notre Dame's Mendoza College of Business. From Atlanta is Jim Anderson, Social Media Sector Lead at Glasswing Ventures. And from New York, William Cohan, founder of Puck News and a former mergers and acquisitions investment banker. Thank you all very much for joining us here on Inside Story. I'd like to start with you, Mr. Anderson. Let's start with what's at stake here. How important is Twitter for the public discourse, and why is it that this takeover bid by Elon Musk has sparked such intense reaction?
Yeah, Kim, Twitter has long punched above its weight class, if you will. Its importance far seems to exceed its performance financially. It has been a mediocre investment, I think most analysts would say, from a financial perspective, but it is embroiled in many of the most consequential discussions around politics, the economy, et cetera. And so I think in many ways, Elon Musk is correct in identifying, wow, this is an under-leveraged asset. Somebody could do more with Twitter. So I don't think he's wrong in going after it, because it really is an important part of what we do. Tim
Hubbard, Elon Musk has said that this is about ensuring there's an arena for free speech so we can all talk freely within the bounds of the law. Do you think he's serious about this takeover bid, or do you think he's just making a point?
I think, honestly, he's making a point. If you stand back and you think about what he wants Twitter to achieve, it's free speech and an open platform for everybody. And to move the company in that direction, I don't necessarily think he needs to buy the company. Instead, even just showing that it's possible to buy Twitter puts Twitter in a position where then they have to think, okay, how can we position our platform? How can we set the users up in order to avoid the need for a takeover by somebody like Elon Musk?
William Cohan in New York. So far, the board of Twitter has responded by triggering the so-called poison pill plan. Just explain to us what that is, what it means.
Well, what it does is it will allow other shareholders to buy shares of Twitter stock less expensively than they're currently trading for in the market if Elon Musk buys around 15% of the Twitter stock. Now, these poison pills are merely a potential hurdle, if you will, for an acquirer, a hostile acquirer, to buy a company. I don't think they've ever been actually invoked. I don't think there's ever been a time when shareholders have actually bought shares of stock in their company at a discount to try to prevent a hostile takeover. So what they end up being is just another hurdle that a potential acquirer has to get over, and forces the potential acquirer to deal directly with the board of directors.
How do you think this is going to play out then? Do you think this will just be a hurdle for Elon Musk? I know he tweeted rather cryptically, "Love me tender," referring obviously to a song, but maybe also to a tender offer.
Right. I think everything hinges now on whether or not he can raise the financing. He already has spent $2.6 billion of his own money. Let's say he needs another $40 billion. He obviously is we think he's the world's richest man and so can he raise the, say, $40 billion that he needs, or the, say, assuming he can raise some of it in debt, maybe let's just say he needs to raise, can put in another $20 billion of his own money. Can he raise another $15 billion from third parties to make this possible? If he can, it's game, set, match. It's over. He'll buy Twitter, whether anybody wants him to or not, whether he wants to or not. If he can't raise that money, then it's a moot point.
Does he have that kind of money if he's the world's richest man?
Theoretically, he does, but we don't know how much of his Tesla stock, which is, of course, the foundation of his wealth, how much of that Tesla stock, which is worth around $175 billion, he has already pledged or margined or hypothecated to somebody else for various loans to pay taxes, to live his life, or whatever it is that he does for SpaceX or the Boring Company, some of his other projects. It's not known how much of that he's already pledged. So the question is how much is left unpledged, and at what point does he risk his value in Tesla to buy Twitter? I mean, I think he's a lot of things, but I'm pretty sure he's not going to risk what he's built up in Tesla just to buy Twitter.
Sure. Jim Anderson, Elon Musk has talked a lot about this, the takeover bid being purely for the good of society, for the good of humanity, almost. What would lead him to make those sorts of statements? What is it that's going on behind the scenes at Twitter in terms of algorithms that has become such an issue?
Well, it's funny, Elon Musk is one of the most consequential entrepreneurs of our generation, probably the past 50 years. So I'll certainly give him that. But trying to understand what's going on in his mind at any point is an exercise in frustration. You said he tweeted, "Love me tender." He did. If any of us think he was tweeting about a song, let's not kid ourselves. We know he's playing a game, right? And he's clever. I think he enjoys being difficult and unpredictable. And he's latched onto, you mentioned the algorithms and the free speech. Those are the two things he's latched onto. And for such a smart, brilliant, really man, he's been maddeningly non-specific about what he really wants to accomplish in and around free speech, other than I advocate for free speech, and in and around algorithms, other than I advocate for opening up algorithms. Both of those are enormously complex topics that involve a lot of subtleties, and he has been maddeningly non-specific. I think the idea of owning Twitter is a lot more interesting to him than the reality of owning Twitter would be.
Tim Hubbard, would you agree with that assessment?
I completely agree that owning Twitter is not as luxurious, if you will, as fighting with Twitter and proposing buying Twitter. If we stand back and we think about Elon Musk and what he wants to accomplish in his lifetime, he wants to do things that are going to push humanity forward, and going to Mars and electrifying, vehicles. These types of grand challenges are where, if he spends his time, he can really cement his legacy. Going and taking over Twitter and spending his time instead at Twitter is important, yes, for free speech around the world, but at the same time, he might view his time better spent, hopefully, trying to accomplish some of these big problems that only he is prepared to tackle.
William Cohan, Twitter wants to double its revenues by 2023 with 315 million monetizable daily active users, as if we needed a reminder that we are monetizable active users. How ambitious are its plans? How has Twitter compared to, say, Facebook from a profitability perspective?
Twitter is woefully unprofitable. I think, you said at the beginning of the show that it is not a great business. It is not a great business. It has punched above its weight. Last year, if you just don't do the ad backs, which of course Twitter would like you to do, it made about $56 million of EBITDA, earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization, which is of course a key metric of profitability on Wall Street. Now they had a $750 million legal settlement as part of that. So if you add that back, maybe they did something like 800 million of EBITDA in 2021. In previous years, it was around 950 million. Somewhat less than $1 billion of EBITDA. I mean, I don't know. I haven't looked at Facebook's P&L lately, but they probably do $1 billion in EBITDA, in a week. And so, Apple probably does $1 billion of EBITDA in a day. That's an exaggeration, of course. But, Twitter is not a great business. And one of the things that Elon Musk has talked about in his tweeting leading up to this offer or surrounding this offer is that he wants to, take ads off the platform. Well, that might be great for the user experience, but it's going to decimate the P&L of Twitter. So, I don't know how he can propose taking this company private and then decimating the P&L.
Could it be a great company, though, Mr. Cohan? I mean, could it be a money-making business? I mean, with Elon Musk, I believe that stocks in Twitter are up more than 20% since Elon Musk disclosed his stake in Twitter on April the 4th. It's almost like just having him involved attracts investment, attracts hype, attracts excitement. Could it go on to do great things?
Well, the fact that he's made an offer for the company and the stock price going up is not the same as the company generating, profitability and EBITDA. I mean, could it be? I think a bigger problem is not could it be a great company. I think the bigger problem if Elon Musk, is the dog that catches the car here. Is he going to do things that alienate many of the users on Twitter that make it relevant? I mean, what makes Twitter so relevant is the great debate that takes place all day, every day. If he does things like bring back Donald Trump, for example, he's going to alienate something like half to 2/3 of his users, and they're going to drop off the system and go somewhere else, and he's going to lose them, and they aren't going to be monetizable, as you said. So I'm not sure exactly what he has in mind here. I don't see his vision for this company making it great.
Jim Anderson, as we mentioned earlier, Saudi Arabia's Prince Al-Walid bin Talal is a major shareholder of Twitter. He said in 2015 that he had, at that point, a 5.2% stake. Now, he has tweeted his opposition to this takeover, saying that the offer doesn't come close to the intrinsic value of Twitter. Do you think for him it's purely a cash thing, or might Saudi have pressured the prince into opposition, as Elon Musk actually implied when he tweeted, "What are the kingdom's views on journalistic freedom of speech?" Is there more going on there, do you think?
I'm sure there is more going on. I mean, all boards of directors have their own intrigue and their own dynamics, and Twitter's is somewhat legendary for having, inside palace intrigue, if you will. So I'm sure there's a lot of dynamics. I somehow doubt for a lot of the people involved here that it's really about the cash, whether it be the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia or Elon Musk, frankly. Twitter, this goes back to the point we've made of Twitter punching above its weight class. It is a really important platform, and there's a lot of people who would be interested in having either a de facto control or absolute control over what goes on, over the moderation decisions that are made there. And I suspect that's a big chunk of the opposition as well, is just a sense that, wow, if Elon Musk gets control of Twitter, if he owns it, especially if he then makes it a lot more valuable, then that's not going to reflect well on the previous board of directors, who almost certainly all will be pushed out, and who did not unlock that economic potential.
Sure. Tim Hubbard, you are an assistant professor of management. How would you describe Elon Musk's management style?
I think he's the type of person that's a problem solver. I think he involves himself in projects and in businesses that are very technically advanced, and rather than shy away from the technical problems that plague the technologies he's trying to develop, he brings together a group of smart people that are able to then to tackle the problem in a way that other companies just aren't. And so if we stand back and we think about how he's able to reuse rockets, how he's able to develop battery technology that other companies just can't, I think his leadership style really is that excitement. It is that bringing together people who are able to really tackle these deep problems. And that's unique. That's putting him in a position where he's a bit of a visionary, where he's able then to control the discourse, but also as he's developing these technologies in these individual companies, he's finding ways to then take those technologies and use them in other areas, in other industries, in ways that weren't necessarily thought of in the beginning. And so his management style is very much bringing people together that are very smart to tackle problems that are very, very complicated.
What about his unpredictability, though? Because if you're a major shareholder in any of the companies that he owns, you know, any of his tweets, anything he says in an interview, under the influence perhaps, you don't know what he's going to say or do next. So, I mean, is that not an issue?
That is absolutely an issue. That's the noise, if you will, around the innovation and the foresight that he has. You know, if you stand back and you think about chief executive officers, if you sit down with a typical CEO, you're going to ask them about an industry lookout for a few years. You're going to ask about the company, what they're going to be doing in 5 years. When you sit down with Elon Musk, though, you ask the question, well, where is humanity going to be in 2050? And that's a completely different thing. And so, yeah, the antics that he puts out are very disturbing at times. They're very controversial. But at the same time, the core of what he's doing is really big. It's really trying to advance humanity. And so I kind of feel like at times, yeah, we like to talk about those things, but at the same time, we really should be focusing on the good things that he's doing. And those are quite numerous.
Sure. William Cohan, just speaking about what Elon Musk has been tweeting, he also tweeted that Jack Dorsey leaving the board of Twitter meant that the board collectively owns almost no shares in Twitter, and therefore that, and I quote, their economic interests are simply not aligned with shareholders. Does he have a point?
Absolutely, he has a point. Aside from Jack Dorsey, who's leaving the board in May, Jack Dorsey has about 2.25% ownership stake in Twitter. The rest of that board has way less than 1% ownership stake. And so they don't, they are fiduciaries for shareholders, but in terms of, actually having any skin in the game here, they have zero skin in the game. And I would also add for your viewers that Prince Al-Walid, who once upon a time may have owned something like 5% of Twitter, no longer does. I'm not sure what he owns at the moment. I'm not sure how relevant it is that he's tweeting about his view of Elon Musk's offer. He's not involved anymore, and he's not on the board. He has no influence. He's not a large shareholder, so I'm not sure why anybody would listen to him at the moment. But the key here is some of the big shareholders that are out there, which are big retail asset management companies like BlackRock, like Morgan Stanley, like Vanguard, which is the largest shareholder at 10%. So I think they're all likely to take, if this financing can be firmed up, if Elon Musk can prove to his financial advisor, Morgan Stanley, and if he can prove to Goldman Sachs, who is representing the Twitter board and the Twitter board, that he has this financing lined up, then those big shareholders, Vanguard, BlackRock, Morgan Stanley, are going to go and take this money and run. This is the best thing that's happened to Twitter in years. Jim
Anderson, let's just go down the road and imagine, what would a Twitter with an Elon Musk having a controlling stake, what would that look like? What changes could we see? I mean, I know he's included a call to remove advertising and dropping W from the name Twitter. But apart from that, I mean, what could that look like?
So I think it would be wildly unpredictable. That's maybe part of the excitement. I think when people look at this, as you mentioned earlier, wow, he's made Twitter relevant in a way that the topic of Twitter, not just what's going on Twitter by other people, just the topic of the company and the platform itself. So I think that in many ways that would be a net positive and would continue because everybody's on the edge of their seat wondering what Elon Musk is going to do next. I think pragmatically, he has said he does not agree with the advertising-oriented business, but as William said, I mean that's like 95% of their revenue. If anybody could pull off a fundamental transformation of a company's revenue model and saying we are 95% ad dependent and I want us to be 5% ad dependent in the next, say, 3 years, Elon Musk, that's the kind of big thing that he could pull off. And they could turn Twitter into a subscription business. There's a lot of other things they could do that are not tweaking around the margins and trying to get 20% growth, but fundamentally changing the nature of the company. And so I would expect at least those things to be under discussion for somebody like Elon Musk. Again, whether he has the time, the patience, and whether that's a big enough legacy, as Tim had said, is that what he wants to spend his time and how he wants to leave his mark, rebranding and reformulating what constitutes Twitter. I think that's the open question.
Tim, Hubbard, where do you think this is all headed? Does it, at the very least, continue to bring to the fore the question of free speech on social media, or how do we moderate speech on social media to keep people safe, to stop information? I mean, how do you see this playing out?
Yeah, if we stand back and we think about what's already happened, we're having the discussion on free speech right now. And I think even if he doesn't go through with the buyout of Twitter, he's already made a mark and already had everybody stand back and think about free speech and what it means and what happens when a company decides to regulate speech. And a lot of times we think of these social media companies as firm companies that aren't going to be changing very much. And so if they take a stance on free speech that might be controversial, a lot of times we kind of just go, oh, okay, yeah, and we move along our day. But at this point in time, he's making us stand back and look at Twitter, look at these Facebook and other companies that are working to regulate speech to some extent and actually say, well, you can come in and you can change the firm. You can buy out the firm. You can change the board of directors. You can change out management and drastically change the position of the company.
But is that just not then putting another one man in control? If it's all about decentralization and, putting making everything transparent, is that not just counterintuitive when in fact what he's looking to do is have a controlling stake?
Yeah, I think and one key thing, when having the controlling stake is that a lot of the social media companies, the interest in them rises and falls at times. And so even if he comes in and he has great visionary, ideas and he's able to make changes, it doesn't always mean that those changes are going to be for the better. So there's always a risk in him coming in as well. And that's the hard part, I think, really to gauge is what are the benefits, but then what are the potential risks in terms of user base, in terms of interest in Twitter? It will definitely keep it in the news and keep it something that we'll be talking about. But at the same time, I'm not sure how users are going to change their level of interaction with the company going forward.
Sure. We've got about a minute left, so I'd like to leave it with you, William Cohan. Where do you think this is headed? What's your take?
If Elon Musk can raise the capital that he needs to prove to the Twitter board of directors and Goldman Sachs that he has the $40 billion that he needs to make his $54.20 an offer real, it's his company. There's clearly no one else coming along to buy this company. There's no question that $54.20 is, a fair price for this company. I mean, $43 billion for a company that makes $1 billion a year in EBITDA is plenty generous, plenty fair. If he can arrange for this financing and prove that he's got it, it's over.
All right, we'll leave it there. Thank you very much for joining us, gentlemen. Tim Hubbard, Jim Anderson, and William Cohan. And thank you too for watching. You can see the program again anytime by visiting our website, aljazeera.com. And for further discussion, go to our Facebook page. That's facebook.com/AJ Inside Story. You can also join the conversation on Twitter. Our handle is @AJ Inside Story. From me, Kim Vinell, and the whole team here in Doha. Bye-bye for now.